Check one. There we go. Evening, everybody. How y'all doing? Well, welcome to Hendersonville Church. And listen, if you're here tonight, then you've taken some time intentionally to spend to hear a little bit about what parenting, discipleship, what's proven, both biblically and also through medical means of how we can do things a little bit better. It gives us some understanding. And my name's Ryan. I'm one of the pastors here. Great to have you all here tonight. I want to introduce Abby Bruce and Ashley Harrington from Summit Wellness Centers. They're one of our partners, and we're really excited just about the information they're going to go through tonight. And they will talk more. If tonight you're here and you're looking to get CEs for fostering, they will let you know what to do with that before the end of the day. But hopefully you guys got a pen and a journal. You can take some notes. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to them.
All right. Is it on? Yeah. Okay, we're so excited to have you guys here tonight. Thank you for coming. If you did not pick up a packet at the front, we're going to be using this throughout our time. So I'll give you a chance, just as we're introducing ourselves, to kind of get that. I would also encourage you just to take notes. We're going to throw a lot of information at you tonight. So write it down because it's easy to forget. My name's Abby Bruce, and I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor at Summit Wellness, like Ryan said. I am also parenting a 2-year-old, so I really am in the thick of this with you guys. I'm using a lot of this stuff at my house. I'm making my own mistakes too, so I really just want this to be just such a time that we can share together and just really grow together and learn together through each other. In my counseling practice, I really specialize in seeing children and teens and trauma. So I've seen a lot of this through some of the kids and teens that I work with as well, and using that experience. And then actually at the beginning of my career, I worked in adoption. So as an adoption specialist, and I worked with adoptive families and foster families. So if you're fostering or adopting here tonight, we definitely want to give you some tips and tricks geared towards that as well.
Yeah, my name is Ashley Harrington. I'm also a licensed clinical mental health counselor, and I've been working at Summit for almost 4 years now. I specialized in kids, teenagers, adolescents. I also work in the school system in Henderson County, and I previously worked at an eating disorder clinic for adolescents as well. So although I am not a parent, I do have a certain amount of experience with parenting and parenting challenges. So we want to be able to answer all questions that you might have. So there are these care cards in the back of every seat. And so if any questions do come up over the next 3 weeks, please feel free to write them down. And then in those little slots in the back, you'll see spots for those cards, and we want to take some space at the end of the 3 weeks to answer some of those questions from stage. The ones that we don't get to from stage, please put your email on there as well so that we can email you, just because we want to be as helpful as we possibly can be. So please feel free to do that. So our goals that we have for you guys throughout the next 3 weeks, we just want to look at some of your own parenting beliefs based off of your own experience and history and how this affects the way we parent our children. We want you to connect with other parents. Just because we don't want you to parent alone, we want you guys to have support around you. So we want you guys to be able to build some community. And we want you to be aware of the connection between you and your child's acting and reacting. We also want to integrate what the Bible tells us about parenting as well as what science tells us about our brain and parenting. And then educate you about how the brain works for your child as well. So throughout the next couple of weeks, we will be using our own experience as adults in order to help make sense of our child's experience. So there are journals at your seats, so please feel free to take notes. But we also want you to take the time to reflect on some of these questions that we ask and write down those reflective thoughts. I know you probably did not come here wanting to reflect on your own experience, but it will help you understand yourself, the way you parent, and your children better. So we'll have some practical strategies as well that, of course, we want you to take notes on. And we also want you to try and implement some of these strategies throughout the next several weeks. So we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm just curious. Oftentimes as parents, we really are just trying to make it through the day. That being said, with sibling conflict, with getting the kids out the door on time, with fostering challenges, with co-parenting challenges, behavior issues, screen time battles, disrespect. I want people to raise their hand if they experience any of those things 1 to 2 times a day. Okay, yeah, I hear laughter. Yes. Okay, what about 3 to 5 times a day? Okay, yeah, more than 5 times a day. Okay, yeah, every now and then, yes. Nonetheless, instead of just surviving and getting through the day, we really want to teach you guys how to thrive and use those as teachable moments.
All right. So we're really going to talk about why Ashley and I are passionate about this topic. Ashley clued you in a little bit to it, but we have worked with parents and their children in kind of one-on-one counseling settings, and what we see often, kind of time and time again, is just the importance of the relationship between the parent and child in order to get across what you want to get across to your kids, to make them into the person that you really want them to be. There has to be this relationship between you where they trust you. And so that's really kind of a foundation of why we were like, what can we do to kind of help parents through this, to teach them some of the things that we know about the brain, and help them with these moments of building relationship with their kids. You may have seen at the front, but a lot of the kind of tricks and tools that we use are from the Whole Brain Child Workbook. This is by a neuroscientist named Dr. Dan Siegel, and then a parenting expert named Tina Bryson. You can feel free to purchase those on the side. They definitely have a lot more information than what we're able to pack into 3 weeks, and we're kind of giving you a little bit of an insider scoop as counselors too, so we didn't want to only focus on the book, but it is a great resource if some of this stuff sparks your interest and you're like, I want to know more. We really like these strategies. They're kind of easy to learn. They're adaptable to your family's unique needs and your unique parenting styles. So throughout our time talking over these next 3 weeks, we really don't want it to necessarily be the do this, don't do this, kind of really structured. We know that all of your families look different, and we know that you might be different in your parenting role. You might be a foster parent, you might be co-parenting, you might be a single parent, and so that's going to look different for you. And so we really wanted to present you with these things that you can adapt to what your family needs. I'm really passionate about parenting and just growing in our roles as parents, because I just feel like it's one of the hardest jobs, but one of the most special jobs we can have in our life. Being a parent has challenged me to have to look at my own flaws, my selfishness, in order to make decisions that are best for my child at times. And so when I think about my why as a parent, why do I want to be a parent? I want to know about how to meet his needs. I want to know about how his brain works. And I want to follow wise instruction from the Bible. My ultimate why I want to grow as a parent is because I feel that God created me to be a mother and disciple my child with the same love that I believe I have in Christ. And this value and belief is kind of the foundation that I make in every decision that I make as a parent. So I want you to pull out your worksheet, and I want you to think about your why. If you came here with someone, I'd suggest kind of discussing it together and working through these questions together. But we're going to give you a few minutes, and we're going to have a little bit of music playing in the background for you to just kind of talk amongst yourselves and think about these things. Think about, why did you originally become a parent, foster parent, or caregiver? Why do you want to grow in your role as a parent or caregiver during this course? What are some things that you see that are problems or issues or things that could be better? What are your values or beliefs that lay the foundation of your parenting? So, like I shared, mine is really my faith. You know, my faith in Jesus lays that foundation for me. What is it for you? What's your value? And then how important is it for you to become a better parent? So you can kind of even use like a rating scale, like on 1 to 10, like what's your investment in like really implementing some of these things that we talk about this week? So take a few minutes and then we will follow back up in just a minute. Okay. You can always obviously take that home and just kind of chat about it once you're home. So, throughout our time here, we are going to be talking a lot at you. Obviously, we're in this big auditorium, but we would love for you guys to answer some questions too if you feel okay with sharing. At times throughout, we're going to kind of ask you some of your thoughts, and I think that can only help us all become better. So, for the brave ones, does anyone want to share your why? Like why you became a parent? You can just raise your hand if you want to share. He's brave. Anybody else? Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that because I think that's one of the reasons why we ask that. Like, not everyone has the typical, okay, we're going to plan for this and then it's going to happen, like, all exactly how we envision when we're like 7 years old, right? Like, becoming a parent looks a lot different when you're actually doing it. And so I think, um, yeah, sometimes our why isn't even planned out and we figure it out afterwards. And I think knowing that why now, like why you want to be a better parent, is so important. Give back to your kids. Anybody else want to share? Yeah, that's okay. That's a great why. Yeah. I feel like in both of those, it's like you want to give your kids more than what you had. Like you want to give them. I feel that as a parent, you want to give your kids the world, and thank you for sharing too. Yeah, we can cry in here. That's fine. I might even cry. I'm teared up at that, so it's okay. Yeah, thank you guys so much for sharing. Um, so as we hold on to those whys, whatever they may be, we're going to talk about the how. So that kind of is the whole point of this, right? Like, how do we be the best parent that we can? How do we give back to our kid, bring them into this loving home and this loving environment? How do we give our kid a life that we didn't necessarily have? Um, and I think that's why it's so important to keep this why at the forefront. That's why we had you write it down. Because when our kid is having a meltdown and you're exhausted at the end of the long day, and I mean, your freedom is gone, right? Like now you just do everything for this kid all the time, and you have feelings too, and you have frustrations too. It's like going back to well, why am I either in this situation? Why did I choose this situation? Why did God bring me here? And holding on to that can maybe get us through some of those challenging times when we reflect back on it. Um, so as we continue these next 3 weeks together, I really do hope that we can all learn from each other. Um, as we are making decisions to kind of guide and disciple our kids, they are learning from us. We are teaching them to be the people that we know that they can be. We're helping them learn self control and how to cope with difficulties of life. And the things our kids learn in those little moments can really help for a solid and strong foundation for them throughout their lives. So, all these little changes that you're making can be really impactful for them. Um, I wanted to share a little bit about, my why is because I feel like God called me to be a mom. And some of my how has to do with that too. So the kind of core belief of Christians is that Jesus died on the cross for our sins. And when we believe this, we are adopted into his kingdom. And we're allowed to be in his presence forever because of his sacrifice. In the Bible, we often see this word disciple. We're talking about discipline. Those two things go together. And it's used for people who gave their lives to follow Jesus. So they essentially decided that they wanted to follow his ways. They wanted to look to him for guidance. They wanted to learn from him. And so when we think about our children, disciplining them is really like discipling them. So we're teaching them how to be disciples, and it really makes sense if we look at it from that lens. They're watching us, learning from us, and seeking guidance from us in order to know how to grow and develop. That's what parenting is. So I think of some words from the Bible that kind of point us to just consider the importance of our role as parents. I feel like all of you guys know that to an extent. You're here, you want to grow, you want to take some time out of your week to be a better parent. And so we know just how important this job is for us. Proverbs 3:11 through 12, it says, "My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those who he loves, as a father a son he delights in." I love this verse because we see such a beautiful combination of pointing us towards discipline because we love, because we delight in our kids. It tells us not to resent this rebuke or discipline, but it's modeled by God for us. So just as we desire for our kids to respect and obey our wise words because we ultimately care about them, God wants us to do the same thing for him. I think I got my pages switched up here. Okay, so sometimes we as humans really feel like every bad action has this consequence, right? Like everything we do kind of has to be paid for. And the difference with what Jesus teaches us is that our bad actions are, met with some boundaries and some consequences in the world, right? But they're ultimately met with his grace. He paid for our bad actions. So our underlying belief for like a healthy balance of parenting includes boundaries, discipline, our faith and values, and then also tons of grace. Grace for ourselves when we mess up as parents, and grace for our kids while they're learning. So thinking about how to give our kids grace, I think we really need to think about what are the specific challenges that they're facing in their generation. I know we have a wide range of ages today of how old your kids are, but I think this is important even for those who have little young ones, like they're growing up in this. And those who have kids that are a little bit older, they're in it right now. Their brains are intaking a lot of information in the following areas. You can see social media, pressure to succeed, sexuality, comparison to others, violence, racial injustice, isolation, mental health issues, and home life. This can be really difficult for us to understand because a lot of us were able to grow up in an environment before the media was kind of so all-consuming. So we might not have been privy to these things when we were so little. And just how our brains take in that information. Ashley will talk about it in a second. But I want you to raise your hand if you had a cell phone before the age of 13. So who in this room had a cell phone before they were 13? Raise it really high because I want us to all look at the percentage. Okay, that's about, 3 people? 4. Okay, not a lot, like compared. I think I got my first cell phone when I was 13. So I looked up the stats, and the average age a child receives a cell phone now is at 6 years of age. We were able to just be kids for longer, and now our children are forced to grow up more quickly than maybe their brains can handle. So the good news is that we are going to show you some things that we can do as parents to help them through these challenges and to help train their brains to cope with input of difficult information and the emotions that creates for them.
Yeah, so that starts off with learning more about the brain and how our children's brain works and also how our brain works. So a lot of us probably know that there is a left brain and a right brain, and they both serve different functions. So the left brain is more of the logical brain, the brain that solves problems, the more analytical brain. Whereas the right brain is the more creative, artistic, also the brain that holds our emotions. And so, for instance, we're using our left brain when we are thinking about buying a minivan because we have 4 kids to tote around. And our kids are using their left brain when they're at school learning to read and write. So give me some examples as to when either we or our kids might use their left brain. Anybody? Yeah. Yeah, right now when we're learning. Yes, definitely. That's awesome. Yeah, right now. Anybody else? Yeah, when we're writing, yes, definitely. Yeah. So we use our left brain oftentimes without even noticing it. And so some examples of our right brain when we're using that is, let's say we're late to work and somebody cuts us off and we get really frustrated and have road rage. That's an example of the right brain. And our kids are using their right brain when they are doing something artistic or using their imagination, or even when they're throwing a tantrum, they're using their right brain. Any other examples of when either ourselves or our kids use their right brain? Yeah, playing. That's perfect. Yes, anytime they're playing, definitely. Yes, when they're using their imagination, absolutely. Yeah. So both for long periods of time, we really we don't want them to use them for long periods of time. If we're just looking at the left brain for a long period of time, they're going to experience an emotional desert where they don't have any emotions at all. But if they're just using their right brain for a long period of time, then we end up in an emotional tsunami or an emotional storm where we're just emotionally flooded with all kinds of different emotions, and we just don't know what to do with them. So our goal is to teach the whole brain perspective, so integrating both the left and the right brain. So this is a time where we're going to use our own experience to understand our kids' experience. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Okay, so I just want you to think about for a moment, and potentially you can journal about it, a moment where you had a heated argument, whether that be with a spouse or a friend, maybe not one you're in right now, but one potentially from several weeks ago. Just think about that argument in your head and potentially write it down. Okay, you got it in your head? So I want us to think about how did we respond after the argument. So did we shut down? Did we cry? Did we yell? Did we react? Did we take it out on them? How did we respond at the end of that argument? And just think about that for a second. And then how would we have liked to have been responded to by that person that we were in the argument with? Would we have liked for them to explain all the details of that argument, potentially why they were right and we were wrong? Or would we have liked for them to offer comfort and understanding? Most of us would probably want comfort and understanding before we're able to even talk about the details of that argument. So this is an example of our first strategy. It's called connect and redirect. And this is where we see it in the Bible. It's in John 11, and it's where Jesus' good friend Lazarus dies. When Jesus arrives to the scene, he finds Mary, his mom, and Martha, his good friend, and they're upset. And instead of fixing the problem, which we know Jesus could have done, he instead met them and felt what they felt. So it says, when Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. So he met them with their emotions, and then he fixed the problem. So Abby's going to teach us more about what this looks like practically as a parent.
Okay. So I want us first, we're going to use an example. This is an example from my own life. So, um, has anyone else in here experienced bedtime struggles with your child? It's hard to go to bed. Okay. I think that might range from any age. It could be a 3-year-old who doesn't want to stop playing. It could be a 6-year-old that refuses to brush their teeth and a tantrum starts, or maybe a preteen that won't put down their phone. Um, so we're going to talk about this example of your child refusing to get ready for bed. Um, these typical responses might be your response if you're not thinking about how to connect with your child on the forefront. It might just be your gut reaction and your gut response. So, my child says, "I'm not going to bed, I'm playing with my trains." And so I say, "Listen to me and stop playing with your trains right now. If you don't get to bed right now, you won't get to play with trains tomorrow." Or, "It's bedtime, no questions, and stop whining." The heart of this is that I know my kid needs to go to bed, okay? And this is probably starting because he is tired. Um, but I'm responding kind of out of my gut reaction instead of really thinking it through. And what that could create is a reaction in your child that looks like this. Maybe your child is a little bit more calm and they do listen to you and head to bed in order to please you. But the connection's lost. They're feeling confused and they're feeling misunderstood. Um, Maybe you enter into a power struggle. This is a little bit more like my 2-year-old, where they refuse to go to bed and maybe they throw a tantrum to get their way. Maybe your kid is crying. Maybe they ignore you and just say, "Okay, well, I don't have to listen to you. I'm going to continue doing what I want to do." Um, Either way, that connection is lost. So here's our first strategy when I talked about how we wanted to do some things that are pretty simple and easy to remember. It's called connect and redirect, and it's going to activate those sides of the brain that Ashley was talking about. So we're not leaving your kid in either side alone. We're using the entire brain to help them make a healthy decision and to help them understand why they have to listen to you to go to bed. So when you think about connecting, you're going to think about your touch, your tone of voice, your facial expression, your empathy, or your pausing. And when you think about redirecting, then you're going to go into the left brain. So you're going to provide your kid with solutions, words, planning, logical explanations, and setting boundaries. We're going to have a video on this in a second to kind of think this through, but um, this is also on your second worksheet, so you can start looking at that now. We're going to talk about how to utilize this um, when your child continues to refuse to get ready for bed. How do you now create this new response based on connecting and then redirecting? So I might, instead of talking down at him and saying, "You're going to go to bed right now because I said you're going to go to bed," I might get down on his level and take a deep breath for myself because I know I want him to go to bed and I want an hour of myself to myself before I have to go to bed. So he needs to get to bed fast. But I might take a deep breath so that I can kind of co-regulate with him and say, "It sounds like you're feeling really sad or mad about going to bed, and it is hard to stop playing with your toys." I'm empathizing with him, and that's the connection part. Um, Then I say, "Sleep is important for us to stay healthy. We're going to go to bed now." I'm holding that boundary. It is time for bed. This isn't about just letting his emotions run wild. Um, and then I maybe ask him, "Would you like to play with trains tomorrow? Or is there a toy you'd like to choose to sleep with tonight?" And that's then activating his left brain to maybe make a more positive or realistic decision. Hopefully, with time, the new reaction of your child could be maybe they feel understood and supported. Maybe they are able to calm down and talk through why they feel sad or mad. Why did they want to keep playing with the trains? What was so important to them about that? And then they might be able to strategize about their next choices and their next steps towards bedtime. Um, so, a big caveat to this is that it takes time, and the effectiveness of this in the moment is going to look different. So, this isn't like a magic solution where you're going to go home tonight and say, "Okay, are you ready for bed? I'm going to tell you that I know you feel sad, and now you're going to listen to me." It really, honestly, takes a lot of time. So, you're building back their emotional trust. The more steady and consistent you can be with this, the more your child will be willing to emotionally connect with you as well. The goal is to always acknowledge and recognize that their feelings are important and real, and that means whether they make sense to us or not in that moment. But knowing that as parents and disciplers of our children, it doesn't have to stop there. So we can redirect those big emotions and we can help our child learn how to problem solve and activate their left brains, even when life hits them with difficulties, trauma, or big feelings. If you think about it, when we go back to our core of discipling our kid, we're shifting. We're not just telling them what to do, we're not just giving them hard and fast instructions that they have to follow from us. We're really teaching them how to learn how to deal with hard emotions on their own, which is a skill we even need as adults. Like sometimes I struggle with that. What would I have turned out like if my parents could have kind of helped me with that when I was younger to really teach me, you have this emotion, you acknowledge it, and then you find out a solution for how you can move forward within that. So it might be harder in the moment. Like your bedtime might take longer to get them to bed than if you just swooped them up and said, we're going. But I think the payout in the long run is what we're looking at. And that goes back to our why, too. Why are we doing this? We're not doing it just so we can get them to bed at night. We're doing it so that we can help them be emotionally healthy adults one day. Okay, so we found a video that just kind of shows a great example of this. And so we wanted to share it with you before we dive into our worksheet.
Your child says, I'm not going to Carla's party. Nobody likes me. Most of us quite naturally jump to direct with, that's not true. Carla invited you because she likes you. Or, why don't you give the party a try? Chances are your child will argue back, right? I told you, nobody likes me. Nobody ever has. Why don't you ever listen? So how can you connect first? Just make yourself present. You will have your own style and you shouldn't feel bound by any formula. Connecting might be as simple as you going, showing that you're listening, inviting your child to say more. Or you might repeat some of your child's words, like, you think nobody likes you? Or you might say, oh, I'm sorry, that sounds tough. I love you. Keep up the connecting until you see signs that your child feels heard, feels cared for. Is their body more relaxed? Have they moved from fury to an I'm sorry for myself whimper? Are they sighing, yawning? These are all signs that the nervous system has shifted out of a state of threat towards more safety and connection. Now you can move to the direct bit. If you get more resistance, stop directing and connect with whatever comes up. Now, at the start, most of us don't notice when we're in direct mode. So let me give you some examples so you can pause to connect first, and again, please use your own style. We correct. For example, no, you're not a selfish person. To connect, we might first say, I'm sorry, you're sounding down on yourself. We reassure. This will pass, it will get better. To connect, we might first offer a long hug. Indeed, nonverbal cues like touch, voice, facial expression, and posture, they get your message through to the nervous system more than words. We educate. Regular nutrition will improve your mood. To connect, we might first say, I can see how you would be anxious about having a snack in school. We give instructions. Time for bed. To connect, we might first say, you look like you're enjoying your phone. And at the same time, I'm conscious it's school night. Notice, by the way, how using and works better than using but.
Okay. So, I want you to go ahead and pull out your worksheet, and consider these things before you write anything down. I want you to get a scenario in your mind where your power struggle might be starting between you and your kid. Maybe a tantrum or an argument. Um, Maybe something that's a theme in your house or something that you continue to struggle with. Or maybe something that happened today, or maybe something big that happened this week. Kind of get something in your mind that reminds you of some of these power struggles. If you're having a hard time thinking of that, maybe you have a preteen that would rather text on their phone instead of listening to you about getting homework done. Um, in this example, connect and redirect might look like understanding why texting on the phone is important to them. Are they feeling lonely and they want to feel connected with their friends? Are they distracting themselves because they are actually stressed and overwhelmed with the amount of homework that they have? Once you understand the underlying emotion, you can empathize with their experience and continue to hold your boundary. No more phone until homework is done. But if they need help with homework or if they're feeling lonely, maybe you can help step in alongside them in that moment. Some other things to consider as you're going through this worksheet. What does a tantrum look like for your child? What are they doing? Do they lash out with their words? Do they lash out with their body? Um, does a tantrum look more internal for them? Are they kind of hardened and stoic? Is it external? Are they running around the house and really outgoing about it? Um, what does your kid do when they're upset? So, not necessarily tantrum, but when they're having a big feeling, like they're feeling sad or mad, what do they do when they're upset? And then what do you do when your kids are upset? How do you feel about that? What do you do? What's your response? Do you use logic explaining why your kid shouldn't feel this way? Do you match their emotion with big emotion? Oh, they're mad. They're doing all this stuff. And so you yell and you're matching their level of intensity and their emotion. So being aware of all these things kind of on their level, but then also how you're reacting can help you make those changes. So I want you to start with um, obviously the connect and redirect page, and start with this top, the current parent response and current child response um, to this tantrum or pattern that you see in your kids. So go ahead and start with that. Maybe talk through that with the person that you came with.
Your child says,
And as you're doing that, what I want you to do is use this connect and redirect to fill out the bottom portion. So, how do you use connect and redirect to in your response, and how do you see that potentially impacting your child as well? All right. This will be a good one to keep talking through as you try this at home. Um, and it might be a little trial and error, and that's okay too. So we are gonna. Oh, I'm going up. Okay. So before we move on from this strategy, I want us to think about what keeps us from connecting. I think this is such an important piece. I think we can touch on it tonight, but honestly, this is something that um, I think we could think deeper and deeper on as parents and just people in general. So for me, I think about this often, and I think when he's acting out or when my son isn't listening to me, I might have a hard time because I think the bad behavior is reflecting on me as a parent. So I might get a little prideful and think I'm a therapist. Like I teach on parenting. Why is my kid not listening to me? Why is he doing this in public? Or why is he doing this at church in front of everyone I know? Um, and so that might be a reason that gets in my way of connecting is just like some of my own pride or some of my own thoughts that somehow connects to me. Like his big emotion somehow is this big reflection on me, which is silly once I sit down and think about it because all kids do this, right? Um, so instead of being able to separate myself from the situation in that moment and maybe allow him to have a negative reaction to something, I might feel like I have to jump in and fix it for him. And so, as I've learned as a parent and as I try to continue to grow and get better, it takes really intentional effort for me to take a deep breath in the moment before reacting and then try to attend to his emotional experience. Whether that is continuing his emotional outbursts or not. Um, it's really all about being triggered. Like, what triggers you? Are you being triggered by your child because they're yelling? Does that trigger you? They're screaming, tears. Do you have difficulty even creating boundaries? Like, boundaries feel hard. And creating a boundary and setting a boundary feels like a trigger in that moment. Maybe if you're a single parent in that moment, you're upset that you have to do this alone. Maybe you're already thinking about the fact that you have to do this alone, and in the middle of that, your kid's melting down, and that's frustrating. Maybe if you're a foster parent, you're wondering if the power struggles will ever end. Like, when is this going to end? Maybe if you're co parenting, you're just having a hard time juggling it all today. You just pick them up from their dad's house, and now they're having a hard time with that, and you're already having a hard time with that, and then that's triggering because they have a hard time with it. And maybe you've just had a long day and it's hard for you to connect with some difficult emotions from your day. um, so I think this goes back again to what we were talking about before, which is just grace. Like, as you're learning to have grace for your child in this and to connect with their emotions in order to make changes for them, I think we can always look further into ourselves and see how we can connect with ourselves. Like, maybe give ourselves that we didn't get when we were being parented, and recognize where you're at in that moment that's triggering you and give yourself grace in that moment too. Um, yeah. So Ashley's going to talk about our next strategy.
So, we've talked about what keeps us from connecting. We've been able to potentially name our emotions as adults, but kids are going to be able, they're going to need help being able to name their emotions in order to get their big emotions under control. So, our second strategy is called Name It to Tame It. And we see this strategy in the Bible in Proverbs, where it talks about the heart of the wise make their mouth prudent, and their lips promote instructions. Gracious words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. And so if you can promote instruction emotionally, then it allows them to better control what they are feeling. So for a child's brain, not only are big traumas overwhelming, like the death of a grandparent, a car accident, or even a foster child being removed from their home, but also little traumas are overwhelming too, like falling to the ground or losing their stuffed animal. Big emotions can flood the child's right brain to where they have difficulty calming down. And as parents, sometimes we can brush things off that feel small to us. So this right here is a chart. It's also in your worksheet. It's the 3rd page. And it's just an emotion chart. So I want you on this emotion chart to circle 3 emotions that throw your child off. Yeah, throw them into like a tantrum, perhaps throw them off in a negative way. Yes, yeah, no, good question, yeah. So 3 emotions that throw your child off. Does anybody feel comfortable sharing one of them? Yeah. Hungry, oh, for sure, that's a big one, yes. Okay. Anybody else feel comfortable sharing? Yeah. Scared, yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, I want you to square off 3 emotions that throw you off. Does anybody feel comfortable sharing those or one of those? Yeah. Worn out. Oh, that's a big one. Yep. Uh-huh. Yeah. Embarrassed. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And potentially you might notice some similarities between the 2. In order to effectively help our child identify what they are feeling in a moment of stress, you have to be able to first identify what you're feeling inside. Sometimes this can come more naturally, but other times it's not going to come naturally at all. And some people can naturally notice what they're feeling. Others, it's a little bit more difficult. Oftentimes, our bodies actually feel our emotion before our brains do. And so, for instance, for myself, I notice that I'm stressed because I get headaches. Or if I feel uncomfortable, I can tell I've got a pit in my stomach. So we're just going to take some time to notice how our bodies feel in order to be able to notice the emotions that go along with it. So this is actually an activity we're going to do from the Smiling Mind app. And I highly recommend downloading this app on your phone. It is free. It's helpful for all different ages, and we use it in the counseling office a lot. It's really just helpful to for any age, like I said, to just allow us to slow down and notice how we are feeling. So this is a child's activity that we're going to do. It's called Let's Go on an Adventure, but we chose a child's activity so that you can do it with your children. And so it's going to tell us, this might feel uncomfortable for some, and that's okay. The guide is going to tell us to lay down and get comfortable. I don't want us to do that. But I do want you to get comfortable in your chair and just listen to what this guide is going to say and notice what your body is feeling as you listen to the guide.
Hi, it's Tamblin here. Welcome to Smiling Mind. Let's go to the land of mindfulness, a place deep inside you where you're safe and strong and you can put a big smile on your mind. Today, we're going to take you on an adventure. And on this adventure, you're going to take your mind on a walk to explore parts of your body. So, to begin, lie down on your back on the floor and gently close your eyes. For the next little while, all you need to do is listen and imagine. Let's visit your feet first. Using your imagination, take your mind all the way down to your feet. Maybe give your feet a little wriggle and just notice what this feels like. Maybe your feet feel warm or sleepy. Now, move your mind up to your legs. Can you feel your legs? What do they feel like? Maybe you can feel your clothes or a blanket on your legs. Good. Now move your mind to focus on your arms. Notice what you can feel about your arms and your hands and your fingers. Give your fingers a wriggle. Notice how your fingers feel. Maybe they feel wobbly or happy. Move your mind to focus on your belly now. Think about how your belly goes up and down when you breathe. Notice how your belly feels. Maybe it feels soft or full. Move your mind to focus on your head now. Notice if you can feel the floor or pillow under your head. Now, as we come to the end of our body adventure, think about your whole body. Your whole body lying here on the floor. Notice how your whole body feels. Maybe your body and your mind feel calm and relaxed. I'm going to ring a bell to end the meditation. When you can no longer hear the ringing, gently open your eyes.
Okay, so what were you feeling in your body in that moment? What did it tell you? Some of you might have felt like a pit in your stomach and kind of like, oh, I hated that activity. That is something I've never done before and I never want to do that again. And that's okay. At least you noticed it. Some of you might feel like a fluttery feeling in your stomach, and perhaps that told you, I'm just excited to be here and learn more about how to parent. Perhaps some of you had a heaviness. You just felt like this weight on you. And maybe, even some tears, noticing that you're sad because the challenges of parenting and life have really weighed on you. Is anybody willing to share what they noticed through that exercise? It's okay if not. Yeah? Yes, he said, I don't know if anybody heard, that he had a hard time sitting still. Yeah, absolutely. Is that right? Did I get that wrong? Okay, yeah. Probably because we don't get opportunities to do that very much, which is why that app is so beneficial, just for us to take time to slow down. It was just 3 minutes long, and again, it can feel very different for some of us who've never done that, but it really helps us identify what we are feeling and be able to name it. So, you might have been wondering this whole time what the snow globe was doing up here. This snow globe is an example of what is going on in our kids' minds. So, let's say your kid missed a nap time and just fell out of his routine and was just really tired. This is what happens to his brain. Let's say you say no to anything. This is what happens to his brain. Let's say your family's rules are different than their peers' rules, and this is what happens to their brain. Let's say your child got bullied at school, and this is what happens to their brain. So before you know it, they're emotionally flooded. So what happens when I shake up this snow globe? Anybody? It becomes unclear, and it becomes chaotic. But what happens when we let this snow globe settle? Anybody? Yeah, it becomes more clear and more peaceful. So being able to help your child name their emotions really help us settle their emotional snow globe. So when your child gets emotionally flooded, do you usually go into fix-it mode? So for instance, let's say they're trying to do their homework and they get really upset because they can't figure out a problem. Do you swoop in and do it for them? That's using your left brain.
When your child gets emotionally flooded, do you match emotion with emotion? So let's say your child is upset because they can't figure out the homework problem. Do you get upset with them because you're wondering, well, why in the world can they not figure this out? Did they not pay attention in class? You're operating in your right brain. So can I get like 3 volunteers to stand up here for a second? Anybody? Thank you. Perfect. Thanks, guys. If you'll just stand each by a glitter jar. Perfect. And I want you guys, go ahead and pick it up. I want you guys to shake it as hard as you can. All of you. Yeah, as hard as you can. And then tell me, how does that feel physically for you guys? Feels relieving? Okay, yeah, to just get some of that tense out. Yeah, some of the tense feeling out. Yeah. How's it feel physically? Okay. No feeling. Okay, yes, fair enough. Yes. Well, you might have noticed your arms are tense. Maybe you are getting some of the tenseness that you already feel out by shaking the jar. Maybe that's how you feel when your emotions are controlling a situation. The situation becomes unclear and chaotic. Yeah, now as you guys are watching it settle, how does that feel physically? Calming. Yes. Definitely calming, relaxing. So this is how, y'all can go ahead and sit down if you like. This is how we manage the fix-it mode syndrome. It's easy as parents to allow the chaos of a situation, a sticky situation, send us into overdrive as we want to manipulate that situation. But what's the best way to manage the chaos of a swirling snow globe? Instead of going into fix-it mode, instead of matching emotion with emotion, instead of perhaps even dismissing and denying emotion that all swirls our children's snow globe, let's name the emotion to tame it and watch that emotion settle. For example, with the homework, let's say your child's upset because they can't figure out a problem. What this might look like is, I can tell you're really frustrated. That homework looks hard. Why don't we try this together? And that's an example of using the connect and redirect as well as the name it to tame it.
Okay. Just as we've been reflecting on ourselves and our own emotional experience, we kind of want to zoom farther back to when you were a kid, and think about how feelings were handled in your family when you were young. So think about what are the messages that you received as a kid. Does anyone feel willing to share this? Any messages about feelings that you got as a child? Yes. If you feel it, just say it. Okay. Okay. So kind of that outburst of emotion is what you're saying. Like, yeah, when feelings were there in your family, they were there. You all knew what they were. That makes sense. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Yeah, way in the back. So not being able, sorry, I had a little hard time hearing you, but not being able to really share what you were feeling inside. You had to keep it inside. Okay, yeah. Anybody else? You'll do there. Okay. The only feeling accepted was happiness. Yeah. And so maybe you had yeah, that's a really good point. Like maybe sometimes their response varied, and so it was scary to know what they were going to react to with your feelings. Yeah. Okay. Allowed to have it, but always told it was wrong. Or what? Yeah. Yeah. Those are, gosh, thank you guys for sharing. I feel like that hit a lot of the spectrum of kind of how feelings might be handled in our past and the messages that we received. So when I was a kid, similar to way back there, a big emotional reaction was kind of handled the same way as misbehavior. So if I was angry, I was misbehaving. Um, I was taught that my negative emotions were something that weren't welcome, and to keep them at bay. Like that was kind of the structure of the family unit. Um, and so some of this might even contribute to maybe I people please a little bit more now, or I have to work a little bit harder on accepting my own negative emotions throughout my week because I'm doing this thing where I'm reconnecting with myself, right? And then I know Ashley had an example to share as well.
Well, my husband, as we were going through this, he had growing up, his dad actually came home from work and just sat down and didn't help with any of the chores at home or anything like that. And so the message he received and has been a part of our marriage is working through, okay, when we come home, potentially we help do things around the house. And so, yeah.
Yeah, instead of like disconnecting from that emotion. And I liked the one that was like, oh, positivity was the only one that was accepted. I feel like we see that a lot now. Like, if you're happy, that's great, and you better just stay happy. Um, so, this is really important to acknowledge because it does impact our parenting. Um, and it's also important, at times to recognize that our parents might have done the best that they could with the information that they had at the time. Obviously, we all have different experiences, so that might not be the case for everyone. Um, but, this could contribute to what we do if we don't acknowledge this and we don't understand ourselves in this area. It can repeat itself and we don't even know it. We don't even recognize that piece that is like kind of continuing to pass down from generation to generation. But we kind of stop that, and we're able to make some better choices when we just acknowledge it and we like recognize where we're at in that. Um, yeah, some common messages I think about is being told to just suck it up, being sent to your room until you're in a better mood. Maybe someone told you that emotions make you weak. I think that's a common one too. Um, so pull out your notebooks because I want you to think about what did and did not work for you as a child. So can you remember an adult in your life, maybe maybe as a parent, maybe it's someone that was influential, acknowledging your emotions and maybe doing something different? Or maybe you remember it going poorly for you, like you didn't get that space to express your emotions. What didn't work about that? How did that make you feel? Um, did you feel connected to that parent or did you feel like that hindered your relationship? So kind of jot down a few thoughts about that for just a second. All right, as you're looking at that page, I want you to think about the similarities you notice between your current responses to your child and your parents' past responses to big emotions. Maybe they're totally opposite. Maybe they're really a lot more similar than you thought they were. So if we think about it, naming these big emotions does make it easier to tame them, not just for your child, but for you as well. So this takes practice, especially if you were not given the tools to do this as children, like we've talked about. Um, so even, taking a breath to pause when my kid is um, lashing out at me about playing with his trains before he goes to bed, I am feeling frustrated and I'm feeling annoyed. And if I can name that for myself, then I can much easier help him through that. And is that bad that I'm feeling frustrated or annoyed? We've all kind of talked about how feelings aren't necessarily a bad thing. I'm allowed to feel that too. but then I can move on from it and I can strategize from it as well. We don't always have to be happy as parents. I think sometimes we get that message. That message continues into our parenting, not just when we were a kid throwing a tantrum, but, oh, you're a mad parent or you're having a hard day as a parent, you're not allowed to have that. So just some food for thought. Our volunteers came up and shook the glitter jars. I'm going to have you watch a video on these and just kind of about pausing, taking a breath, and then I'll kind of tell you how to make these at home if you want to make them with your kid. I think it's a good visual for kids to have when they can see a picture of that. It's a lot easier for them to understand what are emotions, what are they doing in their brain, and how do they calm them down.
I get really mad when my brother hits me a lot.
I don't like it when you say you don't want to play with me.
When I'm mad, my brain can get a headache and it can start hurting.
Your blood keeps pumping because you're like really mad. And you start to get sweaty because you're getting really, really mad. And then when you start getting really mad, you turn red.
When your body can't really control yourself, mad just takes over your body.
I just get out of control.
It's kind of like if you had a jar and then the jar would be your brain and then you put glitter in the jar and that would be how you would feel like. If you shook up the jar and the glitter went everywhere, that would be how your mind looks. And it's like spinning around and then you don't have any time to think. And you sometimes punch stuff and people when you don't really mean it.
When I get angry, I feel it in my heart.
I really don't like when I get angry. The amygdala really reacts, but the prefrontal cortex tries to keep it down.
When I feel like I want to, get really angry and yell, I just sometimes, take deep breaths.
First you find a place where you can be alone, then you find some way to relax and calm down.
When I need to calm down, I take deep breaths.
I breathe in through my nose.
Sometimes I close my eyes or just take deep breaths. It's calming down, it's not moving. It's slowing down and then it stops. And the heart plumps slow and then it goes into your brain. It's like all the sparkles are at the bottom of your brain.
My brain slows down and then I feel more calm and then I'm ready to speak to that person.
Okay. When I do that activity with kids, sometimes we'll shake up the glitter jar and they'll make it and we're talking about it and all their emotions and what you can do at home too. Just as a simple way to acknowledge and accept the emotion is to be oh, what glitter in this jar is like what's in your brain. Can you pick a color and tell me what is the blue glitter like? What emotion is that in your brain? What is the silver glitter? What is that like in your brain? And that can give them something to attach. Oh, it's sad. It's mad. And by kind of having an external thing, then you're accepting that emotion and they're accepting that emotion and then you can talk about it. So how to make these. They're really simple. Just take a mason jar. There's like plastic jars you can get at Walmart too, if you have a younger kid. And you put hot water and you fill it up to like maybe about an inch above, and then you add glitter glue. So it's not regular Elmer's glue, but it's the glue, clear glitter glue, and any glitter that they want. So whenever I make this with kids, I say you can pour as much or as little as you want in it. So it's really fun for them um, to make something to maybe keep by their bed, um, just like kind of a calming thing before they even go to sleep. And then you just screw the lid on and you shake it up. Okay. Well, we wanted to leave you with just kind of a few instructions for next week, and a little bit of homework too. So, what we want you to do throughout the week, your last handout is going to have this thing called an emotions log. And it's got all the days of the week. And what we want you to do is just write down the emotions that you notice in your kid and in yourself throughout the week. Jot them, keep it somewhere that you can access quickly, and when something happens, just write it down. This is really more for you to just kind of recognize where are you guys at, what are you working with, and kind of gauge it, and maybe even think about as you're writing them down on this page, what emotions are hard for you to accept have happened this week. What's hard to write down and kind of like, oh, that hurts that I was feeling that, or oh gosh, this is like the 10th time I've wrote down mad for my kid. What am I doing wrong? That hurts. Like, but still write it down and try to do it, and then you have something we can really use to reflect on next week. And then we also want you to try to do the body scan thing from the Smiling Mind app with your kid throughout the week. See how they respond to that. I get a very varied responses in the counseling room. Some kids are like, what the heck are we doing? And some kids, for some reason, just absolutely love it, and they'll ask for it every single time. So so you can kind of test it out and see if that's something that is helpful for your kids. So next week, just to give you kind of a peek into what we'll be talking about, a lot of this stuff was kind of foundational, but we're going to learn what to do with tantrums, what to do with moments of stress, how to teach your child to manage their emotions. So we talked a lot about acknowledging it today, but kind of how to teach them to work through that. And then next week, we kind of wanted to do something a little bit different and maybe organize ourselves based on life experience. I know not everyone knows each other in this room, so if you feel comfortable, don't feel pressured to, but if you fall into one of these categories and you want to raise your hand now, and then next week find a sign that kind of represents your situation. But how many of you are like biological parents to your child? Okay. And how many of you are parenting with that child's mother or father, like biological mother or father as well? Okay. How many of you are foster or adoptive parents? Okay. Oh, we got such a good variety in here. How many of you are single parents? Okay. How many of you are divorced parents? Okay. We've got at least a few hands raised in every category. How many of you guys are grandparents or family members helping to raise a kid? Okay, thank you guys for all that you do. Gosh. Okay, I think we'll do that next week then. It looks like we have some people in each category, so if you want to, find your group, and then you can kind of connect with others that are in a similar life situation to you. We also, if you are a foster parent, we have this sign-up sheet so you can get CEU credits for your training hours. So you can just come up here, and we've got this sheet, bring your pen, and you can sign up for that. But thank you guys so much for coming. This is just really encouraging to see everybody who wants to learn more, and we're excited just what we'll continue to do over these next 2 weeks as well. Thank you guys, and don't forget about the care cards. So if you have questions, you can start compiling those, and we'll answer them at the end.